Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session today. I would love to introduce myself as well as our amazing panelists we have today. So my name is Madeline Mortimer. I'm the Global Education, Innovation and Research Lead here at Logitech. And what I do is lead research on Edtech hardware to create products that optimize the teaching and learning process in the classroom. And I work very closely with our design and engineering teams to make sure that what we're putting into the classroom is having the most impact it can. I was also fortunate enough to be able to deep dive on the topic of child development and the intersection with technology when I got my master's specializing in this area from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So we'd love to introduce you to our panelists today. Firstly, Alice, would love you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So I am Alice Keeler. I am a teacher. I've been teaching since 1999, and today is a great day because I got my quarter grades in early, so I have a lot less stress today. I am also an EdTech blogger. So at alicekeeler.com, you're going to find all kinds of tips and tricks for how to integrate technology into your classroom and just general educational pedagogy. My master's degree is in educational media design and technology, and I am most passionate about student-centered learning. Does it really help and support students? Does it put students at the center? And I think not just your online tools, but the physical tools that students are using really makes a difference. I do code. So I have 27 add-ons that are officially approved by Google, and I am the only female Google developer expert for Google Workspace. I've also co-authored 7 books, including 50 Things to Go Further with Google Classroom, a student-centered approach. And the thing I'm most proud of course, is that I have 5 kids.
Wonderful. So excited to have you with us today, Alice. And Bedston, would love you to introduce yourself to our audience today.
Yeah, hi everybody. Bedston Burrell. So just a little bit about kind of my background and my role in technology. So originally I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I went to Rufus King High School, and that's when I had my first experience with like audiovisual stuff, computer science classes. Shout out to Scratch for the people who know that. So that was pretty fun. After I graduated, I went to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, and that's when I started to really delve into the audio visual world a little bit. So that's lights and soundboards and stuff like that, cable management, all of those things. But what's really, really cool about that experience is it kind of coincided with what I was studying at the time, which is sociology. And that's what I have my bachelor's in. So taking that experience, I moved out of La Crosse and then I went to Minneapolis. And right now I'm working for Edina Public Schools as a technical operations analyst. And it's really, really great because I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds in my role here because I'm getting that technology side, but also because I'm in and out of the schools and the classrooms all the time and stuff like that, I can use that sociology side to kind of make sure that we're moving in the right direction when it comes to classroom technology and stuff like that. But yeah, I just love technology. I've had a passion for it. I like skateboarding and taekwondo and stuff like that too. So yeah, I'm super, super excited to be here.
Wonderful. It's so exciting. We have such deep and broad expertise for this discussion today, and love hearing where everyone's from in the chat. And so cool that we have people from all different states and across the world. Saw some attendees from Peru, which is really exciting. Excited for our discussion at the end as well. Alrighty, well, let's get into it. So, firstly, let's talk about classroom challenges, just to set the stage. So I can imagine that looking at this meme, when my teacher almost caught me playing games, but I pretend to do my work when she looks at me. I can imagine lots of you can resonate with this type of challenge. And when we look into the research, according to a survey by Kahoot, over 59% of educators say their students are less engaged in class today compared to previous years. So it really shows the difference between, when there were less one-to-one devices, perhaps less tech in the classroom, and now today. At the same time, we of course don't want to lose all of the benefits that technology brings to the classroom. But it's really looking into how can we maintain students' energy and their ability to concentrate for extended periods of time throughout the school day. And so what we see as the key to this is revising how we evaluate what tech is needed within a learning environment and how to adapt instructional methods to maximize student focus and stamina. So the three main areas that we're going to dive into today are firstly physical comfort. So looking into how using tech impacts students' physical well-being throughout the day. Secondly, classroom noise, or we like to refer to it as noise pollution. So what are the different factors both within the classroom and solutions from a tech and non-tech perspective. And finally, reducing visual barriers. So looking into what different tools and methods we can implement that really minimize how students can struggle with seeing the material from across the room and with their peers as well. So let's get into the first section, physical comfort. So we recently partnered with EdWeek, which many of you are most likely familiar with, and we really wanted to dive into and learn about which EdTech investments and tools have the largest classroom impact and value, and what effect tech is having on students' digital wellness as well as academic outcomes. So we conducted a research study with over 1,000 different participants, including district leaders, principals, educators, and really excited to share some of those key findings with you. So one of the main aspects that stood out the most was really this connection between ergonomics and engagement. So 74% of educators say students' level of physical comfort while using EdTech impacts their level of engagement in learning. However, on the flip side, those same educators report roughly only half of their students are very comfortable physically while using different types of hardware accessories throughout the day. In addition to that, 60% of students between the age of 10 and 17 report discomfort during laptop use if there's not the appropriate hardware tools in place. And finally, 28% of secondary school educators from the research study that we did say their students experience neck, back, and or wrist pain as well as fatigue while using EdTech. Now, I know that's a lot to digest, especially because this topic really flies under the radar. Most of the time it hasn't been talked about, but it's really, really highlights that there's a true challenge and issue here. We'd love to hear from our panelists how you feel about these results. Do they surprise you? And how do you personally support your students' comfort during the school day at the moment? Alice, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for asking. Honestly, I don't find these results surprising and hardly at all. I think it's almost no kidding that people need to feel comfortable in order to be in a space where they're ready to learn. And being an EdTech expert, we're often talking about just what's on the student's screen. How often are we really talking about the physical environment that supports what students are using and to make that environment comfortable? So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation today. Now, I've never been in a school where that I've worked in, where they specifically bought new furniture in relationship to buying laptops or other devices. They're just slapping them on top of the desks or the tables that they already have, which are obviously not at a right height. And if you see these desks that have the chairs attached, honestly, I feel like that should be illegal. How we are still in 2023 using these one size fits all desks, which were never comfortable. Now try and putting a laptop or a computer or some sort of technology onto these tables that can't be comfortable. They're not designed to incorporate and be used with a computer. Where do students even just put their headphones? They're leaning down into their bag, they're straining their neck, they're trying to find all of the things, and my students, their stuff's rolling all over the place. It's a challenge. I mean, really thinking about how our students are going to interact with the technology physically is such an important conversation to have. I am right now at a standing desk because it's really important to stand. Look it up. Sitting is worse than smoking. But how many of our students have an opportunity to stand during their learning? I know I feel more comfortable when I'm able to get up and move. And a lot of our students, they're like trapped in these desks that they can't really get up and move around, and they're all their stuff with the cables. It doesn't really make it conducive to get up and move around sometimes. So really important to take those into consideration. So it'd be really hard to argue that most classroom furniture is designed for comfort, and definitely it is a factor.
Yeah, I want to really echo that real quick, because I know me personally, I literally just graduated like 2.5, 3 years ago. The seating hadn't changed from the time that I was in elementary school all the way up till the time that I was in college. And then on top of that, it was just like you were talking about, that the older I got, the desks were fixed. There was no more moving the tables and chairs around in the classroom. Or there would be specific seating that you could twist around, but those chairs didn't move in the classroom. And so you still face those same barriers that we've been facing over the last few years, decades. But I feel the same way. I echo the same sentiment. I'm not surprised by any of this information at all. I feel like I still have a couple of back problems from sitting in these desks. But I did want to point out something that I feel like Adina is doing really, really well to kind of help this at the elementary school level and at the middle school level is number one of the things that we're trying to change around is we're having like dynamic seating spots. And so what I mean is you can have a section of the classroom where there are your tables and your desks and your chairs and stuff like that. But then there's also a spot in the classroom where there are beanbags, for example, or there's foamy, rolly cushioning. So the kids who, jitter a little bit, need a little fidget toy, something like that, they can just, rock themselves back and forth. And that helps to kind of calm down and helps the kids focus a little bit. But yeah, this isn't surprising at all. I feel like it needs to be a super duper huge focus as we go forward, is not just the technology side, but this furniture side within the classroom as well.
I love both of your reflections, especially, thinking about beyond the actual device and the hardware companion tools that can make it a more comfortable experience, but also, the entire classroom environment, what can be in there. And we'd love just to keep hearing from you, Bedston, on if you have any examples on the concepts that you spoke about, how a simple tweak or solution with tech or hardware specifically that has helped solve some of the comfort and engagement challenge.
Oh yeah, 100%. So outside of the seating, the big thing that we do too is we provide like really comfortable headphones for the kids, over the head headphones. And it's really, really helpful in one way because now the students can hear all of the material that they need in the classroom, whether it's an assignment, a video, anything like that, that helps there. But then also, when you have that focus there, when you've created that environment for your students, then they're more likely to stay engaged in the material, right? So think of yourself in an everyday classroom. You're rocking it, you're getting through the entire assignment, everything's going great, and your friend says something funny to you, you know? And so that kind of thing, or somebody tripping, somebody just dipping down to Tyler's shoelace, stuff like that. All of those things can kind of take kids out of the experience. And so personally, I've seen that the headphones have really, really helped with that. I know one example is some of the teachers at Edina Public Schools, they when they have those like Schoology assignments, or when they have like, Chromebook assignments that are 2, 3 pages long, that's when they break out the headphones and they encourage their kids to listen to calming music if there's nothing else. But the headphone piece, as you can see, it's kind of branching out into other parts of the classroom, the other parts of the educational piece for the students. And so that's something that's been huge, 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 huge for our district.
Love that, especially how you phrased it, with that external noise and just everything around it can take students out of the experience, whether they're frustrated with lack of comfort or any other external factors as well. And would love to hear any examples from your side, Alice.
Yeah, of course. One thing that I am super into is just defronting the room, especially as we have devices and there's cables. Having just those rows and then the cables in the way can make it challenging to move around or to have students to really be interactive. And as I mentioned, I'm really into student-centered classrooms. So if anyone's read the book Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Liljedahl, I really couldn't recommend it enough. But he talks about just having the kids stand up and they work in groups around the room. So even just going down to, we had in the library, those big rolls of paper that you rip off like this, just heading down to the library and grabbing some of that butcher paper and using some painter's tape and getting students up and around the room and talking and having those conversations, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a focus on the front. Really allowing students to do more collaborative work. So moving your desks into where students feel like they're supposed to interact with and work with others. The thing that I really notice is that the layout of the room really dictates to students how they're supposed to interact. So in addition to teaching math, I also do teacher professional development, and I will do the same presentation with teachers where we have round tables versus when we're like in an auditorium where they're facing forward. And the level of participation and interaction when they are grouped in ways that makes them feel like they're supposed to lean over and talk to their neighbor versus I'm here to sit and listen to you. And that actually was reinforced in Peter Liljedahl's book, that he did some research to show, yeah, when students walk in the room and they see a standard layout, they feel like they're there for that reason. It's kind of fixed in their mind. So just mixing up how you do the furniture. And then I go and I like steal as much as I can. I don't have a budget where I can go fund tables and some different things. But a lot of times, if you ask and you're kind of on the hunt, you can grab a table from here and there and slowly kind of build where you have some different types of seating options in your classroom. My daughter uses the Logitech crayon, and that is really a great example of just thinking about how students feel comfortable using technology, and having that comfort level helps them to want to participate more. The Logitech crayon is mine actually, and I let her borrow it, and now she cannot use her iPad without grabbing it. And you know what's really nice is it feels really natural in her hand, and then it doesn't roll off at the table. And so as you're thinking of how you're doing the classroom, just that small consideration of tools that are really designed for students to use, that you're not crouching under the table searching for items. That's going to save not only a lot of time, but I don't know about you, but I'm 46 years old, and getting down on my knees and searching for pencils and things around the classroom is a strain on my physical being and also on the students. So just considering who the tools are designed for, in addition to how you can arrange the furniture.
I absolutely love your point on, if they're, especially with the crayon, if students like your daughter, as an example, feel comfortable with the tech and actually excited to use it, that can really help immerse them more and get them engaged and excited in the learning process. So let's go on to our second main area of today. So we're going to talk about visual barriers within a tech-enabled classroom. So in the same research study with Edweek, we also dug into this area and its connection to student engagement. One of the stats that stood out, we'd love to share with you, is 42% of educators reported students in the classroom have trouble seeing images and other material from the other side of the classroom. So this is particularly concerning, especially with the scale that the educators reported on. I would love to hear first from Bedston. In your opinion, what steps can educators take to ensure that every student can see and be seen, as well as interact effectively with others in the classroom?
Yeah, definitely. This is something that we've been talking a lot about over the last couple of weeks, and it just kind of shows to me the importance of it. But I have a couple of notes down from what we were talking about. One of them is that open classroom environment. I think that's huge, right? Having all of your desks facing the same way, that creates a barrier within itself. Your students are a little taller, a little shorter than one another. Maybe some students have glasses, maybe some students don't. Some stuff like that. Those are all things that we have to take into consideration when we talk about this classroom environment. But it's huge. Even with my own experiences, I've realized that classes where I've had to see over people, look through little cracks between folks so that I can get those last couple of words on the slide, it never worked. I ended up not writing the information down, didn't pay attention, and guess who got a lower score on the grades, on the tests, on the assignments, right? Exactly. So it's super duper important that we have a little bit of more of an open classroom environment, a little bit more of a dynamic teaching environment. And so, going along with that, something that I really, really see with the elementary schools is that the teachers are teaching from different sides of the classroom, right? So you can imagine in the front of the room, some of the schools have these like interactive panels, touchscreen, all this cool stuff. But the kids have gotten used to the idea that that is the technology side of the classroom. This is when the headphones are going to be used. This is where the Chromebooks and the iPads are going to be used, stuff like that, right? Then 90 degrees over, and you have like the reading literature section of the classroom. And kids know that this is the time to pay attention. It's where the highlighters come out, it's where the discussion's happening and stuff like that. But there's also a quiet space in the back of the room. And this is something that, you could make a little alcove out of a bookshelf or something like that. But it's another place where kids can go to either focus if they're feeling really amped up from recess and from gym classes and stuff like that. There's another spot for them to kind of calm down, get back to center, and get the work done that they need to. And I think, yeah, so the last one I think is really, really good is to get kids to be collaborative. That's a huge, huge one for me. And again, it goes back to that environmental piece, but having that big open classroom for kids to move close to each other, to get over and ask each other questions, stuff like that. All of it is super duper important. I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, I love your point on the collaboration, and especially having the right hardware in place that makes that collaboration really easy and seamless throughout the lesson as well. And Alice, I would love to hear from your side.
Oh, thank you. I just want to echo what Bedston said. I could not agree more about collaboration. Collaboration really is one of the tools to help increase student engagement. I did an activity with my class the other night, and I just had them get into groups of 4 where they got to talk about a math problem. It was actually a higher critical thinking problem because those play together. And they were so into doing this math problem where usually it would just be working out exponents wouldn't be so exciting. And so looking for those opportunities of how to arrange the room so that they're not trying to look to the front, but look to each other, right? That collaboration with the defronting the room. I mean, in my ideal world, we would have small monitors around the room to really allow teachers to be anywhere in the room and students could look up and then use those devices for presentation. I know that's not entirely feasible, but they do have, a lot of the classrooms have one-to-one devices. And even if they're not one-to-one devices, if I can give a shout out to Catlin Tucker, who is an expert in Edtech blended learning, but she didn't have any computers. She prefers 4 students around one device because it really forces that collaboration, but that's also less cables, less things to step around. So when you're designing your learning environment around collaboration, that can help eliminate, reduce some of the visual barriers. And then I would really encourage you to always be consistent. Be consistent with the technology that you do have. So if you're using Google Classroom or you're using Schoology or whatever tool that you're using, what are the directions that you're giving? If a student was out of the room for whatever reason, or their mind was drifting, or they just didn't memorize every word you said, there should always be a place that they could easily access what is driving the activity or what resources that they need. And just that consistency that they're like, hey, Keeler, what are we doing? And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, oh, I'm just going to look on Google Classroom. All right, cool. What a good idea. Let me know if those aren't clear. So that also helps me as I'm moving around the room, that I'm spending more time working with students, seeing what they're doing, seeing maybe what they're missing and what might be visually in their way, so I can help knock down some of those. And then, of course, just taking advantage of some of the technology that in and of itself is collaborative, like Pear Deck and quizzes, where students can actually see it on their screen in real time. To me, those are really a game changer, and they increase the student engagement in the classroom, so it's a double win.
Love the point, especially on consistency and having, not each time having to scramble around and see how that collaboration piece will work, but really have the systems, both to your point, the software side with Google Classroom, as well as all of the hardware pieces as well. And we'd love just to dig a bit deeper as well on Beston's side on, there are many different challenges, as you both outlined just now, that are first identified on the educator side while they're using this tech and working with students. And would love to hear in your role if you have any examples on how you collaborate effectively with all of the different stakeholders in your school to identify those challenges proactively and seek out solutions.
Yeah, definitely. One of the super huge things that's a little current right now that we're working on is putting these audio enhancement beams into the classrooms. And so its main purpose is like a voice lift, so that one, the teacher doesn't have to strain their voice all the time. Because, I mean, you're speaking to 6, 7 different classrooms, you're all day. It really, really does impact folks. But the second part of it is that for our deaf and hard of hearing students, they have like an FM transmitter connection that you can just plug directly into the audio beam. You don't have to change any settings or anything to it. But the really, really cool thing and the cool process about that was it was actually the students who were telling us originally that they were like, hey, I know you're trying your best. I know you're trying to project to the back of the room, but we still can't hear you all that well. And so that it got the teachers and other faculty members together, and they brought this issue to us in the technology department. And so after that, we did the research and we found the audio beams and we realized that's kind of what we were going towards. And once we were able to deploy some of those into the classroom, we were relying on our students to tell us, hey, is this working? Is it not working? What happens when we play videos with the projector? What happens when you're playing videos with the the ViewSonics, the interactive panels, stuff like that, but really back and forth, really, really back and forth. But I have to say, like, a shout out to them because we wouldn't have been able to make as much progress. We wouldn't have been able to help so many students without the students themselves, you know. And so that's really, really huge. But kind of as you can see, it trickles up a little bit. So it starts with the students, then it goes to the faculty members, then it comes to us with the budgeting and buying all the audio beams. And now we're deploying them across the district. And so now all of the teachers have that voice lift capability. Now all of the deaf and hard of hearing students have an option. It may not be the best thing, but it's something, you know what I mean, in the classrooms. And so it's just blossomed into something, and I'm so happy to work with everybody. It's just amazing. It's amazing.
That's such a wonderful example, and I think especially highlighting how when a lot of the tech challenges are looked into, it can not only help all students but also students with specific needs, like you pointed out as well, which is really powerful. So let's go into the last area that I'd love to share with you all today. And so last section on noise pollution. So a common challenge of today's classroom includes this persistent noise that both within the classroom as well as externally. And an average classroom can be as loud as 77 decibels, which I know might be tricky to conceptualize, but that's twice as loud as what the World Health Organization recommends in terms of just to maintain health. Sounds such as students talking, noises from devices and other machinery within the classroom, as well as external factors such as street traffic, construction, all of those pieces. And in our research, we've seen to what extent noise is having an impact on both educators and students. So firstly, we saw that 40% of students say classroom noise is so great that they can't hear or understand what their teacher is saying. And this is particularly concerning, as especially for younger students, they're still developing the ability to identify what a full sentence is said if they miss a few words as well. So this can result in a lot of learning loss within the classroom. Secondly, what really stood out in the research was that over 75% of educators say their voices often get hoarse and strained because they're having to talk a lot at a very loud volume to overcome the noise pollution so that students can effectively hear their instructions. So we'd love to hear from Alice, your opinion on how schools and districts can ensure that Edtech is enhancing student focus and stamina, taking into account this noise pollution piece.
Well, thanks for asking me. I'm sure I'm so unsurprised by these results. I can't tell you how many times I had to pause class because they're doing the leaf blower outside in addition to all the noise from the air conditioning unit and people running up and down the hall. Well, we have to literally stop class. I actually need vocal cord surgery. I'm drinking this throat coat tea so I can maintain my voice and try to avoid it. But it turns out this is actually a really common problem, and they actually call it teacher voice is this situation because we're always talking over the kids. I think during our rehearsal, someone mentioned that the noise is essentially the same as trying to do your work next to a washing machine. And I definitely feel like that sometimes. And so you're straining your vocal cords, which is obviously not good for you as a teacher, but then you're almost shouting, and that's not making a very warm and friendly environment. Now, being an expert in educational technology, what is the right tech to give to your students? And it turns out it's a highly qualified teacher, right? There's only one technology that is proven that if you just drop this technology in the classroom with no professional development. We're not going to tell you how to use it or anything that's going to improve student learning, and that is a microphone. Oh, gee, gosh, if the students can actually hear you, that's going to make a difference. Think about also how that impacts students using one-to-one devices with all the noise around. So having really good headphones that are comfortable. A lot of times those earbuds are not the right size for little ears. They fall out, they're not of high quality. If we're really trying to maximize the learning environment, making sure they can hear you using a microphone is going to be one of the best investments that the school can make in your classroom to really help every student hear the lesson. I've also seen some teachers that have gone out and gotten the microphone. It's for karaoke. You can get them at like Toys R Us type places. And the kids love feeling like they're on stage and their engagement really comes alive. So passing the mic on, again, back to my student-centered classrooms, is giving them some amplification that they can hear. Now, my own children, I have 5. Most of them have anxiety. My little guy has such severe anxiety is that when they're doing math lesson and there's so much noise going on, he will literally just stand up, start screaming, run out of class, and hide in the bathroom under the toilet. It's just so much for him. And so they try to give him some sound blocking headphones or ways to kind of isolate himself away from the noise. But that, I don't think it's so uncommon for students to have anxiety. Now, my kiddo is a bit of a extreme example, but even my daughters suffer from the anxiety, and hearing a lot of noise in the classroom really affects their mental health. And so taking into consideration how we help students to focus, how they can hear the lesson, how they can participate in different ways and feel comfortable is as important as deciding what you're going to push through into the lesson.
I love your point, especially on, there's a lot of tech out there not particularly designed for the students themselves and to be age and developmentally appropriate, which is just as important as having the tech itself. So looking for that tech that's been designed specifically for those age groups and students. Bedston, I would love to hear from your side, from your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I cannot echo enough what Alice was just talking about. I'm just like, yes, 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 100% yes. There are 2 more examples that I was thinking of over the last couple of days too, because one of the things I've been talking to the panel about is um, getting that teacher input and getting it at various levels of education too. I just, just to pick their brains a little bit and see what they thought. And one of the big things too is to give space for like a breathing exercise right before class starts, right? And so that's the inhale for 5, exhale for 5. Do that a couple of times, and I was blown away the first couple of times that I saw this, because at first I was just like, oh yeah, it might work for some classrooms and not for others, but across the board, students are super duper receptive to those like big classroom activities that calm them down a little bit. The next one is having like a chime or some sort of music play right before the lesson starts, right? And again, it works in the same way. The kids are like, no, 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 no. You see how it works out? And so those are 2 huge things that I just see in my everyday life that I'm just like, wow. And it's so efficient, it's so quick. And that's something that I was just very, very impressed by. But again, like we were just talking about, when it comes to the noise pollution, the microphone, it's the voice lift technology, it's the comfortable headphones for the kids. All of that is super duper important in terms of that focus and that student engagement. But yeah, you got to have a little piece of all of these things to start increasing that engagement for the better in the classroom. And then hope that that's something that you're kind of taking away from this whole experience, is that it's a little bit of the technology, it's the orientation of the classroom, it's the furniture in the classroom. All of those things come into play. So yeah, don't forget about that.
I love that point on just that holistic approach, both from a tech perspective as well as, non-tech as well, looking at all of those different factors that can help decrease that noise pollution within the classroom. And Alice, before we move on, we'd love to hear, I know you have some really great stories around how you've seen noise pollution be effectively decreased within the classroom.
Thanks. I think I read ahead in my notes when I was chatting before, but I love what Bedson's talking about is intentionally building in those moments where we take time to quiet down and to do the breathing exercises and to really think about mental health and the noise in the room. Also, just giving students time to think. If you remember from your teacher credential program, what did they tell you? How many seconds should you wait to do wait time when you ask a question? And I think it was something like 4 to 5 seconds, but it turns out we actually only wait 1.5. We're not even giving students enough time to think. And so increasing that wait time. Now, I'm really terrible at wait time, but that wait time should obviously be quiet, especially for our students like my kids who have anxiety. They need some time to process. So when I use a technology tool where instead of asking kids to raise their hand, I give them the opportunity to submit digitally, and that can be through Pear Deck, or I'll just take a Google Slides and give students edit access on the slides. There's a lot of ways that you can use a Google form. Allow every student to respond. So something I found is really interesting is it's not 4 to 5 seconds for everyone to think. It actually takes significantly longer, like 4 to 5 minutes to really get everybody's input. But then we're going to have a conversation around everybody's ideas. But during that time where students are thinking and you're bringing some more quiet in the room, it helps us to recenter, reduce some of the noise in the room, and give students that space. And it's really important that if you want students to participate and to think, that they feel comfortable in that space to do those things. It can be challenging when you have students working in collaborative groups. And so giving some quiet reminders that we are going to take a pause or keeping the sound down before we bring the students all back to share out their ideas. But just being aware of where the sound is coming from and giving students opportunities to participate and find information, even if it is noisy, can really make a big difference.
Fantastic points. And especially, with the transition piece as well, that could really help from a non-tech perspective with the noise pollution. And I think it goes back to Besden's point of always thinking about the holistic picture. Only tech can only help so much. Wonderful. So would love in the last 10 minutes or so that we have to move into Q&A. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we'd love to hear any of your questions for any of the panelists, myself, also sharing anything that you'd like to share by using the question mark icon, and we'll address those. So let's see. Okay, so we'll start with our first question here. We have a question coming in, and it's what are your non-negotiables when it comes to selecting Edtech?
Can I start that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, either of you who would.
I apologize. I really want to do things that are my non-negotiable is that it's improving learning. We're not just digitizing paper, that there is some way that it is bringing learning closer to the student, giving students more voice, giving them more choices, allowing them to be actively engaged. And active engagement isn't just note-taking. I think a lot of times I see technology is used to replicate something from the late 1900s, and there's nothing wrong with doing paper tasks. I'm a big fan of paper tasks. I do a lot of them. But when I take it to a technology tool, I want to know, how does this let me collaborate better? How can I do a feedback loop? And again, how do I get more students to actively be participating in it, not just writing on it? Bedston?
Yeah, when it comes to non-negotiables, I think that the comfort piece is really, really big for me. The comfort and the audio part of it, because like we were talking about before, it's really, really huge that students can, hear everything that's going on. They can absorb the lesson they're supposed to. So when it comes to technology, we're making sure that, like, for example, with the audio beams, that they produce really good quality sound and that the throw is exactly what we need it to be. Otherwise, it's not worth it, because then we're just putting a band-aid over the solution of, like, oh, our students can't hear, here's just another speaker kind of thing. So I would definitely say it's the audio piece. I have to make sure that all of the students can hear, however the technology is being applied in the classroom. And then something as simple as, like with mice, some of the classrooms have mice that they give to the students when they know that they're going to have super heavy tech days. And something like that helps with carpal tunnel. It helps with that whole motion of the arm and everything. And so, as long as we're keeping that audio piece and that comfortability piece in mind, then we're good to go. Then we're good to go for sure.
Of those points. And we have, I think another way to look at it is using the SAMA model, which perhaps some of you are familiar with. So looking at tech and its functionality in terms of substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So evaluating, how is looking at all of the pieces of tech in the classroom, whether it's hardware, software, or in the full classroom environment, and especially the pieces of tech that are just being used for substitution, looking for ways to modify how it's being implemented to move up that ladder. It doesn't necessarily always have to be redefinition, but at least the getting up to the augmentation piece, so that it's providing value within the learning environment as opposed to inhibiting it or causing any frustration. Let's see what other questions we have. So another question that's come in, we'd love to start with Bedston on this one. What advice do you have for educators that are struggling with tech fatigue? So if there's one thing differently with tech, what would you say it should be?
Yeah, in terms of dealing with that tech fatigue, I think it's like almost similar to putting a personal goal for yourself, is to take the super duper small steps, right? And so, what one of the things that the teachers in my district are dealing with is that they have that same perspective, where there's iPad this and Chromebook this, and all of the assignments are online, stuff like that. And so, one of the big things is, and unfortunately, it does take a little bit of work, but 2 points. One is to contact that technology department, because this is where we're supposed to step in. We're here to support you in that way, and we're going to either simplify the classroom down a little bit for you. If it's just taking the technology to the bare bones of it and saying to them, like, okay, so you don't want your students to use Chromebooks and iPads all day, right? But that online Schoology piece is a factor still. So why not push all of that tech heavy stuff to the end of the week, for example? So that way, the kids are still getting that authentic chalkboardy kind of classroom experience. But then it also gets them excited to use the technology and get ready and drived up for it on that Thursday and Friday. But I think it's really, really huge to kind of have that collaboration piece and to say, hey, listen, I'm kind of stuck here. I feel like I have too much in the classroom and we're not using everything. Be open and honest about that, because on our side of things, that helps tremendously. It helps tremendously, because on one side, we'll be thinking to ourselves, we got to put audio beams in there, iPads, Chromebooks, all types of this technology, right? Sometimes we need to scale it back a little bit. And that's why I think it's huge for that communication piece there. But just remember that, at the end of the day, this is your classroom. You're in control, right? And so, like I said before, reach out and see what you do need. What bare bones things do you really, really need in the classroom? And then outside of that, have fun with it. Play with the schedule a little bit, and then kind of go from there. But one of the big things that I want to hint on too, really, really quickly, is that technology isn't going away, right? And so that's why we've got to hop on this train here. And so it doesn't look the same for everybody, of course. But like I said, if you only want to use your Chromebooks and your iPads for certain lessons, have it be that, and then have your kids put them away, you know? And again, communicate with us so that we can be better about deploying technology and stuff like that in the classroom. But yeah, those are the couple of things I put in there.
Bedston, I feel mind blown thinking about, hey, you should contact your IT department to say that this is too much. That's literally never occurred to me before. Um, how would you recommend to teachers to advocate for a more collaborative environment with the IT department? I'm not in the IT department, so I'd love some tips.
Yeah, definitely. So we have, like, I guess the entire district relies on this ticketing system. And so everyone, they hate to hear it. They really do. But anytime there's an issue, anytime a phone call or anything like that, we're just like, make a ticket. Please, please, please make a ticket. Right. And so for us, the way that we have our system set up is the ticket will close itself after a couple of days. Right. And so we have to be in that constant communication. We have to be actively working towards solving the problem. Otherwise, it's going to go away and it's going to look like one of our tech department folks closed the ticket, right? And so that has been huge for us, just keeping track of things, seeing what's coming down the pipeline. There's some like data analytical tools to it too. So we can see what kind of tickets are coming in and how often, stuff like that. But oh my goodness, we would not survive without that ticketing system.
Well, I'm really big into thinking that everybody at the school is equally responsible for student learning. I taught in Clovis Unified, and that you could just see the custodians even just like whistling while they worked, that they felt that ownership, that they too were equally responsible, and definitely felt that from the IT department. But I guess my pushback, Bedston, is that you're saying a personal, like, hey, I'm having a struggle here. I'm not sure what to do with my classroom. That feels like a conversation or relationship that you build with IT, as opposed to what exactly would I put into a box that would make it feel like I need some support and structure, and being willing to feel vulnerable to ask for that help.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the big things is a lot of teachers want to get like one-on-one support when it comes to the new technology in the classroom. And I guess the big thing there is it has to do with the language and the environment, that communication that you're having with your staff, with teachers to begin with. Because one thing that I do is I put a lot of exclamation points in the comments and stuff like that. So it's always like, "Good morning!" exclamation point. I haven't solved the problem yet, but I've talked to this person, that person, and this person, and we've got you. Stuff like that. Just that very upbeat kind of language that helps a lot. But the other thing too is one thing that I put at the bottom of my emails, commenting on tickets. If someone's reaching out to me and they just send me a Microsoft Teams message, I'm always like, please, 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 if there's anything else I can do, if you need me to help you set this thing up, if you want to spend a couple of minutes just working on this thing and making sure that you're super comfortable when class starts again on Monday. Uh, This is what I'm here for. And I think that open communication builds that trust and that relationship with teachers, specifically in different schools where they're like, I can trust Bedson. He's not gonna um, just send me a document to read and just as like, have at it. Like, no, 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 no. I think it's very, very important to leave that option open to say like, it's okay. we have to be on the same page here. I think that's super duper huge. But no, it all comes down to language, letting people feel important. That's the big thing for me there.
I love that, making people feel important. And speaking of important, if I could just wrap this up, I'd like to come back to where I said before that the only technology that's really proven to impact student learning just straight off the bat is the microphone. So you don't need to have 10,000 tech tools that you're trying to juggle and use all the tools. And so I always recommend that you just stick to 3 that you use consistently. If you keep switching up what tool you're using, it's confusing for the students and for you. So feel okay with just dialing back the number of tools that you're using, and then work with your IT department on how to maximize that slimmed down version.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to thank our amazing panelists for this discussion today. It's been such a pleasure to have you in this session, and to stay in touch with Logitech for Education. We have logitech.com/education. We have Education Resource Center within there as well, which covers lots of the different topics we discussed today. And finally, thank you so much to our attendees for joining us and your wonderful comments, reflections, and questions, and hope to stay in touch and have a wonderful rest of your day.